Hi, I'm G, this is my art channel, and this is my ink drawing of a rose done with a brush pen. So the first thing that I do after drawing out the rose is I get the brush pen and I ink all of the outlines in a nice kind of light line on 165 GSM paper by De La Rowney. I can make the lines thicker later on if I want to, and the tool that you can see I'm using here is the Pentel Pocket Brush Pen. And one of the reasons I was doing this drawing was because I came off the back of Inktober this year, having really enjoyed it, and I was still in that kind of ink zone. So I thought, well, I may as well use that energy and create something with it. So this is a picture that I've had lying around for a while, and I've drawn this before in a kind of a watercolor, very, very soft tonal style. And I wanted to use the brush pen to give it that kind of linear inked hatching kind of style that I've used before in a couple of videos. I'll put links to those videos below, so if you do want to check them out, you can do. So I'm still trying to learn from mistakes, and what I usually do is jump all over the picture doing little bits here, there and everywhere. So I thought I'd be really more structured this time, and I would try and make sure that I worked from top to bottom and also from left to right. That's also important because even though I'm using a really good paper that the ink gets absorbed into fairly quickly, it can smudge if I put my hand on the wrong area, which is why you can see me using a scrap of paper there to go underneath my hand for when I'm doing some of these delicate angle bits. I need to rest my hand for a bit. And I'm using kind of two approaches with the strokes on this particular picture. Quite simple and straightforward sounding. The first one is I start very, very thick and I press down on the brush pen, and then I ease up on the pressure as I kind of flick the brush, sort of away from me or up from me. So you get a big thick line and then it becomes thin. So that's really nice for doing some dark to light areas. The other is the kind of reverse. So what I'll do is with some of the areas, because of the angle that I'm drawing at, I'll start with a thinner line, as thin as possible, and then work my hand back and apply pressure as I reach perhaps the edge of a petal or as I'm sort of working my way downwards. Then it gets a bit thicker and darker towards the base. So they're kind of similar, opposite kind of strategies, but I use them at different parts of the picture because, of course, I've got the piece fixed in front of the camera. I'm not turning it around and going at it from a different angle. So you can see here what I'm doing is I'm working, trying to start solid and then go lighter and lighter and lighter with the line, which, of course, gives it that hopeful feeling of depth where you've got some darker shadow and then you're working out towards an area which is more like hopefully a grayish kind of tone. And one of the other things that you can see me doing is I'm either angling the strokes or curving the strokes, because of course we're dealing with a flower here and the petals are curving constantly. So in order to try and get that effect, I'm trying to either curve the strokes that I do, or I'm trying to angle them so they'll be pointing in a different direction. It's just an idea that I have, obviously, to try and give it, again, that idea of you being able to touch this and some things being closer to you, some things being further away, and giving it that kind of idea of depth. An alternative way I could approach this is deliberately to do all of my strokes, all of the lines, all of the hatching in one direction, either top to bottom, sort of vertically, horizontally, or diagonal, but a kind of constant kind of line, and it would give the picture a very different look. I'd still be able to achieve areas of light tone and dark tone, but it would give it an even more stylized kind of approach, quite an unrealistic approach, although you might be looking at this and saying, well, that's not too realistic either. So there's different approaches to the way I could do the inking, and I might in the future try one where I do all of the lines, on a constant kind of direction, all kind of parallel, and see what I can achieve with there. So at the halfway stage, I was really, really pleased with how it was going, but there was one thing that I had noticed, and you might have noticed it too. It's that there's a kind of, even though I'm trying for two types of strokes with it, there's an irregularity or a randomness, or a variety is a nicer word, to the strokes that I've done. Some appear thicker, some appear thinner, some are closer together, some are further apart. I mean, partly that could be my technique, absolutely. It could be the kind of mood I'm in when I'm coming back to this piece and doing some after having a bit of, a couple of days layoff. But it's also to do with the angle of the brush pen. You twist it around, you use it at a different angle, and it can give you a very, very different look to the stroke that you're trying to do than what it was doing previously. And I'm guessing that's because of a little bit of wear and tear on the nib through my sort of constant use with it through the years. So it's kind of changed, like the same way that a normal brush would. You use it at a different angle, you can get a different mark. So I would want a bit more regularity to the lines that I'm able to achieve on this kind of thing. But for that, I think I'd have to try and use the brush pen at exactly the same angle every single time, which is absolutely solid to do. And of course, turning the piece around and being able to do all of my lines, from a similar kind of angle. But then I obviously would have just set the camera up in a different way to allow me to do that. I prefer to have it right in front of me, not changing, so that you can see it developing from first strokes to last. But of course, I'm open to suggestions. So, let me know what you would like to see in these ink videos. If you would like to see me, moving the piece around and doing the strokes, from a sort of constant kind of angle rather than keeping the picture fixed in front of me and seeing how that might differ, then, let me know in the comments below. And any other thing, if you wanted more close-ups, even more close-ups and more close than I've done with this one, then, let me know and I can try and put all of that into the next ink video that I do. And I really enjoy sharing the close-ups because you can see where I've put pencil guidelines in to show me where I need to stop the strokes because there's a highlight, or perhaps show me the kind of angle and curve of the strokes that I need to do when I'm using the ink pen. And here I am working in the bottom right hand corner, so the picture is almost finished. And this is a speed drawing video, but if you want to see a video that's got a lot more slowed down and real-time sections within it, a much kind of slower tutorial, then I'll post links to that one below. I've painted an iris using the ink brush before, and I put in quite a lot of kind of slowed down real-time sections there, really talking through exactly what I was doing with the brush and, showing you exactly what I was doing. So here is the finished piece, and if I zoom in here, you can see the kind of differences in the strokes, sort of looking at the top left, where I'm perhaps, as a right-hander, finding the strokes easier to cut across the page, then towards the top right, where I would be flicking perhaps the strokes away from me, and you can see the slightly irregular nature of some of the strokes when I go in a bit closer, and you can see the picture as a whole. It's not something I'm totally unhappy with, but it is something that I want to have a look at in future to try and get a much more regular kind of set of strokes and set of hatching across the whole picture. Thanks for watching the video, and if you did like it, please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and maybe check out some of the other videos that I'll leave links to.